He hadn't touched a woman in 12 years. And now the first one to fall into his arms looked like she'd been dragged through hell itself. Jack Carter didn't expect much from life anymore. He lived quiet, alone up in those dry Arizona hills, with nothing but the wind and the weight of memories he never spoke of. He had a cabin, a shotgun, and regrets older than the trees around him. But that day, everything changed. She came stumbling out of the trees like death was chasing her, barefoot, filthy, wrapped in a strip of white cloth that might have once been a dress or a curtain. Her arms were scraped raw, lips cracked, and her eyes, they looked like they'd seen things no one should ever see. She collapsed right there in front of him. No scream, no name, just two whispered words, clutching that filthy cloth to her chest. "Please don't." Jack froze. She wasn't bleeding much on the outside, but her body shook like she'd just crawled out of fire. He stepped closer. She flinched but didn't pull away. That's when the cloth slipped, just enough to show her back, and what he saw made his stomach twist. Burns, welts, deep twisted scars, symbols carved into her skin like someone had tried to write their name in her pain. Jack stumbled back. It wasn't the blood. It wasn't the wounds. It was the way she curled in on herself, like she'd learned how to disappear. And for a moment, all he could see was Tennessee, the war, the girl he couldn't save, the one who'd looked at him with the same broken stare. He'd walked away once. He'd sworn never again. He stripped off his coat, slow and steady, and wrapped it around her like a promise. No words, no questions, just action. Then he picked her up and carried her away from whatever hell she'd come from. For the first time in years, he felt alive. He thought the worst was over. He had no idea the real storm hadn't even started. The cabin was warm, but up in those hills, even a summer night carried a bite. He laid her on the old cot by the back wall. She didn't speak, didn't even try to cover herself more than she already had, just curled into a ball, clutching that coat like it was stitched from safety. Jack didn't ask anything. Truth was, he didn't know where to start. So he did what men like him do when words feel too heavy. He built a fire. Not because it was cold, but because the sound of it crackling gave the room a heartbeat. She barely moved. Her eyes darted around like she expected someone to break through the door. Every sound outside made her flinch. Even the wind brushing against the shutters seemed to rattle her bones. Jack brewed coffee. Bitter, strong, older than it should have been. It gave his hands something to do. He sat at the table, watching the fire, glancing toward her now and then. Still breathing, still silent. But the way she gripped that coat told him she hadn't given up completely. Later that night, she stirred. Her head turned, and her eyes met his for a heartbeat. No words, no emotion, just connection, a flicker of something human buried deep under the pain. Jack nodded, like a man who knew when not to speak. She turned her head back toward the wall. The next morning, she whispered her first word. "Water." Jack handed her a cup. Slow, careful, no sudden moves. She drank in silence, then looked at him a moment longer than before. And that look didn't ask for help, didn't thank him. It just said one thing: "I'm still here." What Jack didn't know was that single word, that one sip of water, would set off a chain of events no fire, no shotgun, and no amount of silence could stop. She didn't talk much that day. Just short answers, nods, careful glances like she wasn't sure he was real. Later that afternoon, while Jack whittled a broken chair leg on the porch, she stepped outside and sat on the steps. Didn't say anything at first, just stared into the trees. Then, almost like she was talking to herself, she said it. "They used to make me clean their boots." Jack kept carving. Didn't flinch, just nodded slow. She went on. Said there was a mining camp not far off. Not official, not on any map. A place where they worked people to the bone and punished anyone who tried to leave. She'd run twice. First time, they broke her nose. Second time, they carved up her back like rawhide. Jack didn't ask how she'd gotten out the third time. Some stories are better left for stronger days. But just as the sun dipped behind the pines, Jack heard something that froze his blood. Hoofbeats. Fast. Coming up the ridge road. He stood, grabbed his shotgun, and motioned her inside. She didn't hesitate. She moved like someone who'd been trained to fear moments just like this. The rider who appeared didn't look like a cowboy. He looked like a banker who'd lost his watch and blamed the waitress. Fancy vest, greasy mustache, cruel eyes. "Lily Ross," he called out. "You got one chance to come back quiet." Jack stepped off the porch. "She's not going anywhere." The man smirked. "Ain't up to you, old man." Jack cocked the shotgun. Not aimed, just a warning. This wasn't a city street. This was his land. The man didn't draw. He just spat in the dirt, turned his horse, and rode off. But the look in his eye on the way out said one thing clear. He'd be back, and he wouldn't be alone. Jack didn't speak for a long while. Just sat there on the porch, shotgun across his lap, staring into the trees. Later that night, he scribbled a note to an old friend who still carried a badge, just in case. 3 days passed, quiet ones, but not the kind of quiet that lets a man rest. This was the kind that made the hair on your neck stand up, where even the wind felt like it was holding its breath. Jack stayed close to the cabin. He didn't cut wood, didn't check traps, didn't wander off like he normally would. He kept that shotgun clean, over and over, as if the world might fall apart if the barrel wasn't shining. Lily noticed, even if he didn't say it out loud, he was waiting for something. She moved softer now, not like a frightened animal, but like someone who'd learned to live small so the world wouldn't notice her. When Jack cooked, she stayed near the door, as if she needed a way out. When she slept, she curled tight, every sound outside pulling her awake. He'd hear her breathing change in the middle of the night, hear her whisper things to herself that weren't meant for anyone's ears. Sometimes a name, sometimes just don't. On the fourth afternoon, the air went still. No birds, no bugs, just the kind of silence you could taste. Jack set his cup down on the porch rail and didn't move. He heard them before he saw them. Hooves pounding, 3 riders coming fast up the ridge road. Inside, he said, not loud, not sharp, just certain. Lily slipped through the doorway, without a word, the kind of quick, practiced motion of someone who'd survived too many close calls. Jack stood in the open doorway, shotgun loose in his hands, but ready. The first rider was the same man from before, the one in the fancy vest with the greasy mustache. This time, he'd brought company. "Step aside, old man." The rider barked, voice louder than it needed to be. Jack didn't move. "You got no say in this. Girl belongs to us." Jack said nothing. The second rider shifted in his saddle, hand drifting too close to his belt. Jack didn't give him the chance. He raised a shotgun and fired, quick and sure. The blast echoed through the hills. The man yelped and tumbled from his horse, clutching his leg as blood soaked the dust. The other 2 froze. Their bravado cracked just enough to show the fear underneath. But they didn't run. Not yet. Then another voice came from the treeline, calm, steady, worn like leather. "I'd think real hard about your next move, boys." Out stepped a man with a badge glinting on his chest, rifle slung low, eyes sharp as barbed wire. Abram Hale, Jack's old war buddy, now sheriff of the whole territory. "This here's my jurisdiction," Abram said, walking closer, never breaking stride. "And she's under my protection now." The wounded man groaned in the dirt. His friends cursed under their breath, but none of them reached for their guns again. The one in the vest spat, glared at Jack long enough to make a promise without saying a word, then turned his horse. They left slow, but they left. Jack stood in the doorway, heart hammering harder than he wanted to admit. Lily peeked around him, her eyes wide, her body shaking like she wanted to bolt, but couldn't decide where to go. Abram glanced at her, then at Jack. "You always did know how to stir up trouble," Abram muttered, lowering his rifle. Jack gave the smallest grin a man could give. "Got your note." Later, when the dust had settled and the horses were long gone, Jack finally asked, "How'd you know to come?" Abram smirked. "You sent a letter that smells like gunpowder and regret. I figured serious." Inside, Lily sat at the table, still holding that coat around her shoulders like it was armor. She looked at Jack a long time before speaking. "Why'd you help me?" she asked, voice soft, not accusing, just tired. Jack leaned against the wall, thinking longer than he probably needed to. "Because someone should have help a long time ago. And I wasn't there." She studied him like she was trying to figure out if that was the whole truth. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was more than that. That night, the cabin stayed quiet, but not the kind of quiet that gnawed at you. Lily didn't hide behind the wall this time. She sat at the table while Jack cleaned his shotgun again. When the fire cracked, she didn't flinch as hard, and when the wind brushed the shutters, she didn't curl up quite so tight. Jack noticed the change, small as it was. And though he wouldn't have said it out loud, it scared him more than the gunman ever could, because he knew what it meant when someone started to believe they were safe. It meant someone would come to take it away. The sun rose slow over the ridge, painting the hills in gold, but Jack barely noticed. He sat at the porch table with a half-empty cup of coffee, watching Lily move around inside the cabin. She wasn't hiding anymore. Not really. She still flinched when a bird rattled the roof or when a stick snapped outside. But now she stayed in the open, wrapping his coat around herself like it actually belonged to her. Jack didn't ask her anything. He figured she'd talk when she was ready, and if she wasn't, pressing her wouldn't help. She helped gather kindling that morning, her small hands shaking more from habit than cold. Later, she washed the tin plates without being asked. Little things, but little things meant a lot when you'd seen what she had. By noon, Abram rode back up the ridge, dust trailing behind him. He tied his horse near the gate and stepped onto the porch like he'd done it 100 times before. "You planning on keeping her here?" Abram asked, keeping his voice low so Lily wouldn't hear. Jack sipped his coffee. "For now. She needs a place." Abram leaned on the rail, eyes scanning the trees. "That bunch that came here, they're not done. You know it. The man in the vest, name's Crowley. He's been mixed up in more dirt than I could keep track of, smuggling, illegal camps, you name it. Got himself friends with deep pockets." "I figured," Jack said. Abram looked at him harder. "You ready for what comes next?" Jack didn't answer, which was answer enough. That evening, while Abram rode back to town to stir up what law he could, Lily sat on the porch steps, knees pulled close. Jack whittled a stick, the quiet between them easy now. After a long while, she spoke without looking at him. "They used to tell me I was lucky," she said. "Lucky they didn't sell me off. Lucky they just made me work." Jack's knife slowed against the wood. "That what passes for luck these days?" She gave a short, humorless laugh. "Guess so. First time I ran, they broke my nose. Second time, she didn't finish, just touch her back through the coat." Jack waited. "They said if I tried again, they'd make sure no one ever looked at me without turning away." Her voice cracked, but she didn't cry. "Yet here you are," Jack said softly. Her eyes met his, and there was steel there, hidden under all the hurt. "I wasn't going to die in that camp." Jack nodded once. "Good." Just as the sun slid low, the air changed again. Still, heavy. Jack didn't like it. He stood, scanning the ridge. No riders this time, no hoofbeats, just the uneasy quiet that told him someone was out there watching. Lily noticed it too. She froze halfway to the door, her eyes cutting toward the trees. "Inside," Jack said again, calm but sharp enough to make her move quick. He stayed on the porch, shotgun loose in his grip, waiting. The forest stayed still for another long minute. Then a single crow burst out of the trees and flapped off into the darkening sky. Jack didn't see anyone, but he didn't believe for a second they'd just imagined it. That night, neither of them slept much. Jack sat by the stove, boots on, shotgun across his lap. Lily dozed on the cot, but woke at every sound, eyes wide, breath shallow. Once, near midnight, she whispered, "They're coming back, aren't they?" Jack didn't lie. "Yeah. Why don't you tell me to run?" Jack stared into the fire. "Because I'm tired of running." For the first time, she smiled. Just a ghost of it, but it was real. Then she lay back down, still holding his coat, like it was stitched out of something stronger than wool. By dawn, the hills were quiet again, but the kind of quiet that feels borrowed like peace on loan. Jack knew it wouldn't last. And sure enough, by midday, Abram returned, face hard. "They're gathering men," Abram said, dismounting. "Not ranch hands, not drunks. Guns. You got ours, maybe." Jack glanced toward Lily, who stood just inside the door, listening even though she pretended not to. "Then we don't wait," Jack said. "We make our stand here." The hours before trouble always felt different, like the land itself knew what was coming. Jack moved through the cabin slow, checking the shotgun, counting shells, setting the extra box on the table where his hand could reach it fast. Lily stayed close, not asking questions, just watching. Her eyes followed every move he made, as if memorizing it. "You ever shot one of these?" Jack asked quietly, holding the small Colt revolver he'd dug from an old trunk. She shook her head. "I've only ever seen them pointed at me." Jack handed it over, but first. "Not heavy. Won't kick too hard. Don't pull the trigger unless you mean it." Her fingers closed around the grip, too tight at first, but steady enough. She didn't look scared of it, just uncertain. "You think they'll really come here?" she asked. "I'd bet my last breath on it," Jack said, then softened his tone. "But you're not alone this time." She didn't answer right away. Finally she whispered, "Feels strange having someone say that." Outside, Abram paced near the edge of the trees, eyes sharp, Winchester ready. He'd ridden back in before noon with a face that told Jack everything. These men weren't coming to talk, they were coming to take. "You sure about this?" Abram asked when Jack stepped outside to join him. "Not even a little," Jack said, sliding shells into a shotgun. "But I'm done watching people get dragged back into hell." The sheriff nodded once, like a man who understood regret better than anyone should. Inside the cabin, Lily sat at the table, the revolver resting in front of her. She traced the edge of Jack's coat sleeve with her fingers, staring at the threadbare cloth like it was some kind of map. Jack came in, crouched near her. "When this starts," he said, "you stay low. If I go down, you don't wait. You run to Abram. Understand?" Her jaw tightened. "What about you?" "I'm too old to run," Jack said with the faintest grin. That earned him a look, sharp, almost angry. "Don't joke about that." "I'm not," he said simply. "I just know my part in this." A bead of silence stretched between them, heavy but not cold. Lily swallowed hard, then asked, "Why do you care so much? You don't even know me." Jack rested his elbows on the table. "I knew someone once. Years ago. She needed help, and I wasn't there. I swore I'd never let that happen again." Lily looked at him a long moment, like she was trying to decide if that was enough. Finally, she nodded. Late afternoon brought the sound they'd been waiting for, hooves pounding against dry earth, rolling up the ridge road like distant thunder. 3 at first, then 5, maybe more. Jack stepped onto the porch with his shotgun cradled, Abrams sliding into position by the edge of the clearing. "Stay inside," Jack told Lily without looking back. But she didn't move from the doorway. "I'm not hiding while you two stand out there." "Lily, I said I'm not hiding," she snapped, voice trembling but steady enough to mean it. Jack almost argued, but there wasn't time. Dust rose through the pines as riders appeared, led by Crowley in his spotless vest and cruel little smile. He reined in hard at the edge of the yard. "Last chance, old man," Crowley called, loud enough to rattle the shutters. "Send her out, or we take her, and this whole shack with her." Jack didn't blink. "You'll have to try." One of the riders shifted in his saddle, hand drifting to his gun. Abram's voice cut through the still air like a whip. "Don't." Crowley glanced toward the sheriff. "You're out of your depth, Hale. This ain't your fight." "Wrong," Abrams said, rifle steady. "Girl's under my protection. You want her, you go through me." Crowley spat into the dirt. "So be it." The first shot cracked like lightning, and the yard erupted. Horses screamed, men shouted, lead tore splinters from the porch rail. Jack fired once, twice, each shot deliberate, forcing them back. Lily crouched low but didn't scream. She gripped the Colt like Jack had told her, eyes locked on the door, breath ragged but steady. One rider toppled from his horse, clutching his side. Another veered wide, returning fire blindly. Abrams' Winchester barked from the trees, dropping a man to the ground before he even cleared his holster. But they kept coming. Jack stepped down from the porch, shotgun blazing. A bullet snapped past his ear close enough to feel the heat. He didn't flinch. He fired again, pumping the action smooth, old instincts kicking in. Inside, Lily's heart pounded so hard it felt like it would tear through her chest. When a shadow moved near the window, she raised the Colt with shaking hands and pulled the trigger. The glass shattered, and someone outside cursed, scrambling back. The gunfight raged only minutes, but it felt like hours. When the smoke cleared, 3 riders lay wounded in the dust, and the rest scattered back down the ridge. Crowley wasn't among the fallen. He'd slipped off during the chaos, disappearing into the tree-line. Jack stood in the yard, chest heaving, shotgun empty but still ready. Abram emerged from cover, calm but grim. They'll be back, he said. Jack wiped sweat from his brow. Then we'll be ready. Inside the cabin, Lily still crouched on the floor, hands locked around the Colt. When Jack stepped in, she looked at him with wide, unsteady eyes. I shot at someone, she whispered. Jack crouched next to her, gently prying the gun from her fingers. Yeah, and you're still here. That's what matters. Her breath came hard, tears welling but not falling. I don't want to be like them. You're not, Jack said, voice firm but kind. You're alive. That's different. The cabin smelled of smoke and gunpowder. Jack sat on the porch steps, cleaning his shotgun again, though it hardly needed it. His hands shook a little, but he kept them busy. Lily stayed inside, sitting on the floor by the door. She hadn't let go of his coat all night. They didn't talk much at first. Abram was out checking the ridge, making sure the rest of the riders were really gone. Jack listened to Lily's breathing, quick at first, then slower, steadier. Finally she spoke, her voice small. I thought I was going to die out there. Jack didn't look up. Me too. She hugged the coat tighter. But you didn't run. I told you, Jack said, setting down the shotgun. I'm done running. For the first time since she arrived, Lily let out a real laugh. Weak but real. You're stubborn, she said. Jack gave a half smile. That's one word for it. When Abram came back, his face was hard. They'll try again, he said. Crowley's not the kind to walk away after a loss. He'll bring more men next time. Then we have to finish this, Jack replied. Abram shook his head. You sure you want that fight? You're not 20 anymore. Jack's voice stayed calm. I wasn't 20 the last time I had a fight either. Age doesn't matter when you don't have a choice. That night, they ate a simple meal, stew and coffee. Lily barely touched hers. Jack noticed, but didn't say anything. He didn't want to push her. Instead, he told her about the cabin, how he'd built it himself years ago with nothing but his hands and a hammer. He talked about the hills, the way the wind changed before a storm, little things no one had asked him about in years. Lily listened. She didn't talk about the camp that night. She just asked him small things, if he always lived alone, if he ever got lonely, if he believed people could change. Jack didn't know how to answer the last one. In the middle of the night, she woke up shaking from a dream. Jack heard her whispering and walked over, crouching near the cot. Bad dream? He asked softly. She nodded, eyes wet. I saw their faces again. The ones who hurt me. Jack didn't try to give advice. He just sat there until her breathing slowed. You're safe here, he said finally. As long as I'm standing, no one's touching you. For a long moment, she looked at him like she wasn't sure she could believe anyone could keep a promise like that. But then she nodded and lay back down. The next morning was quiet, but not peaceful. Jack walked the edge of the clearing with Abram, checking for tracks. Someone had been close in the night. Too close. They're watching, Abram said, waiting for the right time. Jack glanced back toward the cabin where Lily stood in the doorway, holding his coat around her shoulders. Then we don't wait for them, he said. We end this before they do. Abram studied him. You got a plan? Something like that. That afternoon, Jack taught Lily how to reload the Colt, slow and steady, until she could do it without fumbling. She hated it at first, hated the smell of the gunpowder on her fingers, but she didn't quit. Why are you making me learn this? She asked. Because I won't always be the one holding the gun, Jack answered. She swallowed hard and nodded. I don't want to be scared forever. Then you won't, Jack said simply. Later that day, Abram brought news. A man in town had seen Crowley talking to hired guns. More were coming. By nightfall or the next morning, they'd ride again. Jack didn't show fear, but Lily saw it anyway. Not for himself, but for her. That evening, the three of them sat around the fire, waiting for the sound of hooves. Lily finally broke the silence. Why are you doing this for me? You could have sent me away. Jack stared at the flames. Because I know what it's like to need help and not get it. And because you deserve better than running for the rest of your life. She looked at him for a long time. Maybe you do too. Jack almost smiled at that, but it faded fast when he heard it. Faint hoofbeats in the distance, coming closer, slow and steady. They're here, Abram said, standing up. Jack rose too, loading the shotgun one more time. This ends tonight. Lily stood in the doorway, her face pale, but her eyes steady. She didn't ask to hide. She didn't ask to run. The night came down heavy, pressing against the windows like it wanted inside. Jack stood on the porch with his shotgun across his chest. Abram crouched in the shadows by the edge of the clearing, rifle ready. Lily waited just inside the door, revolver in her hands. The hoofbeats grew louder. Not hurried, not wild, slow and steady, like men who knew they owned the night. Jack counted at least 6, maybe more. The riders appeared through the trees, moonlight flashing off gun barrels. Crowley led them, sitting tall in that polished vest like he was riding into a business deal, not a fight. "Jack Carter," Crowley called, voice carrying easy in the cool air. "You're making this harder than it has to be. Send the girl out. We'll ride away. No one has to get hurt." Jack stepped forward, calm but solid. "She's not going anywhere." Crowley's grin didn't reach his eyes. "Then you're going to die for nothing." "Maybe," Jack said, "but not tonight." Abram shifted in the shadows, his rifle aimed square at Crowley's chest. "You boys best turn around now," he said. "This land's under my watch, and I'm not shy about burying men who don't listen." Crowley's smirk vanished. He raised a hand, and his men fanned out, surrounding the yard. The horses stomped nervously, sensing the storm about to break. Lily gripped the Colt so tight her knuckles went white, but she didn't back away from the door. "Last chance," Crowley barked. Jack cocked his shotgun. "You had yours." The fight exploded in an instant. Gunfire tore through the clearing, bullets slamming into the porch rail, splintering wood. Jack fired back, every shot careful and sure, forcing 2 riders to duck for cover. Abram's rifle cracked from the tree lean, dropping a man from his saddle before he even cleared his holster. Lily crouched low behind the doorframe, heart hammering so loud she thought the whole world could hear it. When a shadow moved near the window, she raised the Colt and fired just like Jack had taught her. The glass shattered, and someone outside cursed, retreating into the dark. Crowley stayed back, letting his men take the worst of it. Jack saw him moving around the edge of the trees, looking for a way in. Jack stepped off the porch, keeping his shotgun close. "You're wasting time," Jack shouted over the gunfire. "You're not taking her." Crowley's voice cut through the chaos. "You can't keep her safe forever, old man. One way or another, she's coming back." Abram's rifle boomed again, another rider tumbling into the dirt. The rest started to pull back, not eager to trade more blood for Crowley's promises. But Crowley himself didn't move. He locked eyes with Jack, hatred plain as day, then finally yanked his reins and vanished into the dark. The shooting stopped as sudden as it started. The clearing went quiet except for the horses running off and the moans of the wounded left behind. Jack lowered his shotgun, chest heaving. Abram walked out from the trees, calm but tense. "They'll be back," Abram said, voice low. "And next time they'll bring more." Jack glanced toward the cabin. Lily stood in the doorway, shaking but unhurt, revolver still in her hand. Her face was pale, but her eyes burned with something new. Not fear, not really. Something harder. "I'm not going back," she said, her voice steady. "I don't care what they do." Jack nodded once. "Then we finish this." Inside, while Abram tended to the wounded men enough to keep them alive for questioning, Jack poured Lily a cup of water. She sipped it with trembling hands. "I shot at someone again," she whispered. Jack crouched beside her. "That doesn't make you like them. It makes you alive. And I'm glad you are." She swallowed hard. "I don't want to live scared anymore." "Then you won't," Jack said. "Not while I'm here. Not while Abram's here." Abram came in from outside, brushing dust off his coat. "Crowley's not giving up. He'll come back with a small army next time." Jack looked at Lily, then at Abram. "Then we take this fight to him before he does." Abram raised an eyebrow. "You thinking what I'm thinking?" "Yeah," Jack said. "We go to that camp. We end it there." Lily stared at him, eyes wide. "You'd go to them? Isn't that suicide?" Jack stood, reloading the shotgun. "It's called finishing what they started." Morning came gray and cold, though the sun was already high. Jack hadn't slept at all. He sat on the edge of the porch with the shotgun balanced across his knees, watching the road curve down the hill. Lily came out with 2 tin cups of coffee, one shaking slightly in her hand. "You should rest," she said. "I'll rest when this is done," Jack replied. He took the cup and gave her a tired smile. Abram walked up from the barn, saddlebag over his shoulder. "I asked around last night," he said. Crowley's camp is 3 miles north. Not on any map, just like Lily said. Bad place. They've got men with rifles, plenty of them. You sure you're ready for this? Jack looked at Lily, who stood barefoot on the porch boards, holding his coat tight around her shoulders. I'm ready, Jack said. Lily's voice was quiet but strong. So am I. Jack shook his head. No, you're staying here. Her chin lifted. If I stay here, they'll come back. If I go with you, I can face them. Jack saw something in her eyes he hadn't seen before. Not fear, not even anger, but resolve. She was done running, done hiding. He didn't like it, but he couldn't deny it. They rode out before noon. Jack's old mare creaked under his weight, Abram close behind on his bay. Lily rode Abram's spare horse, holding the reins tight with trembling hands. They didn't speak much. The only sound was leather creaking and hooves on hard ground. Halfway to the camp, Lily broke the silence. When you said someone once needed help and you weren't there, who was she? Jack stared at the road ahead. Her name was Anna. During the war, she was younger than you, just a girl. She begged me to help her get away. I told her to wait, that I'd come back. But when I did, he stopped. His throat tightened. I was too late. Lily didn't look away. That's why you're helping me. Jack nodded. That's part of it. But it's also because you deserve a chance. Everyone does. Abram glanced over his shoulder, voice low. Crowley's men won't give up easy. We do this fast, clean. We get in, scatter them, take Crowley out if we have to. No speeches, no warnings. They reached the ridge overlooking the camp just as the sun began to drop. Smoke curled from crooked chimneys. Ramshackle shacks and tents sat crowded together, and a few men walked between them, rifles on their shoulders. Jack could see the marks of misery from 100 yards away. Broken wagons, empty barrels, chains on the ground near the gate. Lily clenched the reins so hard her knuckles turned white. That's the place, she whispered. Jack studied her face. You sure you're ready to see this again? She nodded, eyes shining but hard. I'm not letting them own me anymore. Abram checked his rifle. We hit them now while they're relaxed. Take down the guard at the edge, then move straight for Crowley's tent. No hesitation. Jack gave Lily a steady look. You stay behind me. You only shoot if you have no other choice. I understand, she said. They moved slow through the trees, quiet as shadows. Jack's heart pounded in his chest, not from fear but from the weight of what was coming. When they were close enough to see faces, Abram whispered now. The first guard never knew what hit him. Abram's rifle cracked once, and the man dropped. Jack stepped out, shotgun ready, forcing the next two to freeze in surprise. Drop him, Jack barked. They hesitated, then one reached for his gun. Jack fired before he could aim, the blast echoing off the hills. The camp erupted in chaos. Men shouted, scrambling for weapons. Lily stayed low, following Jack close, her breathing sharp and fast. A bullet ripped through a barrel near her, spraying splinters. Jack wheeled and fired again, clearing the path. Crowley appeared near the largest tent, fury twisting his face. Get them, he screamed. More shots rang out. Abram picked off a rider, trying to mount his horse. Jack pushed forward, step by step, every move deliberate. Lily clutched the Colt tight, but didn't fire, not yet. She kept her eyes on Crowley like he was the only man in the camp. Jack's voice cut through the noise. Crowley, this ends now. Crowley sneered, raising his pistol. Then end it. Before Jack could fire, a shot cracked from somewhere to the left. Crowley staggered, but didn't fall. The bullet grazed his arm. He cursed and dove behind a wagon, yelling for his men to surround them. Abram shouted, Move! They're closing in. Jack pulled Lily toward cover, heart hammering. She looked up at him, breathless but steady. We're not leaving, are we? Jack shook his head. Not until he's done. The gunfight raged, men scattering through the camp, shouts mixing with the roar of gunfire. For every man they dropped, two more seemed to appear. But Jack didn't stop, and neither did Lily. Every step closer to Crowley felt like stepping out of her fear and into something new, something strong. The camp burned as the sun dropped behind the hills. Smoke curled into the purple sky, and gunfire echoed off the ridge like thunder. Jack and Abram pushed forward, step by step, clearing every corner. Lily stayed close, Colt steady in her shaking hands, her breath quick but controlled. Crowley's men were breaking. Some dropped their guns and ran into the trees. Others fought until Abram's rifle or Jack's shotgun cut them down. The smell of gunpowder mixed with smoke and dust. Through it all, Lily's eyes stayed locked on one man, Crowley, crouched behind an overturned wagon, firing wild shots that went nowhere. Jack motioned for Abram to cover him, then moved in slow, hugging the shadows. A bullet cracked past his shoulder. He didn't stop. When Crowley's gun clicked empty, Jack stepped out. "It's over," Jack called. Crowley snarled, fumbling to reload, but Lily's voice rang sharp behind him. "Drop it." Crowley froze, glancing over his shoulder. She stood 10 paces away, both hands on the Colt, steady despite the tremor in her arms. Jack saw the choice in her face. Fear fighting against fury, the old pain against something new. "You think you're free now?" Crowley hissed. "You'll never be free. People like you don't get away." Lily took a step closer. "Maybe not, but people like you don't get to decide anymore." For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Crowley made his choice. He spun toward her, gun half raised, and Jack fired first. The shotgun roared, and Crowley collapsed in the dirt, his pistol skittering out of reach. The camp went still. Men dropped their weapons. Some fled. Some just sat down where they stood, beaten and empty. Abram lowered his rifle. "It's done," he said. Jack walked over to Lily. Her hands were shaking hard now, tears spilling over, but she didn't drop the Colt until Jack gently took it from her. "It's over," he told her again, softer this time. "You're safe." She looked at Crowley's still form and whispered, "I thought I'd feel different." Jack nodded. "Killing a man doesn't make you feel better. Living does." They rounded up the survivors, tied their hands, and left them for Abram's deputies to collect. Before riding out, Lily stopped in the center of the camp. The chains were still there, lying in the dirt. She bent down, picked one up, and stared at it a long time before throwing it into the fire. No one said a word on the ride back. The hills were quiet, peaceful in a way they hadn't been for days. By the time they reached the cabin, the stars were out cold and bright. Inside, Jack set the shotgun down. Lily sat at the table, staring at her hands. "I didn't run," she said, almost to herself. "No," Jack said, pouring her a cup of coffee. "You didn't." Abram leaned against the doorframe. "Crowley's gone. His men won't bother you now. We'll clean up the rest." Lily looked from Abram to Jack. "What happens to me now?" Jack thought about it a moment. "Whatever you want. You can stay here, or you can leave. Point is, it's your choice now." Her eyes filled again, but this time the tears didn't seem heavy. "I don't even know what to do with a choice," she whispered. Jack gave her a small smile. "You start by breathing. Then you take the next step." Abram clapped Jack on the shoulder and headed out to his horse, leaving them in the warm glow of the stove. Jack sat down across from Lily, feeling a weight he'd carried for years finally lift just a little. "You think people can really start over?" she asked quietly. Jack nodded. "If they decide to. Starting over isn't about forgetting the past. It's about not letting it own you anymore." She held his coat tight around her and let out a breath that sounded almost like a laugh. "Maybe you're starting over too," she said. Jack didn't argue. He just looked at the fire and let the silence sit there, calm and good for once. Out in the dark, the wind moved through the trees, but this time it didn't sound like danger. It just sounded alive. The West didn't change overnight. There'd always be more men like Crowley, more camps hidden in the hills, more girls running barefoot through the trees. But there would also be men like Jack, men like Abram, people willing to stand still and open the door. Sometimes that was enough to change everything. Sometimes all it took was one act of kindness, one moment of courage, one decision not to walk away. And if there was any lesson worth carrying from that cabin in the Arizona hills, it was this: you don't heal by hiding. You heal by standing, by choosing, by living, no matter how much it hurts.